and House Bill 731, and there's been small development on House Bill 682, and I'm going to have Representative Smith tell us about that in just a moment. But just want to welcome everyone to, to the first meeting. I can't tell you if there's going to be subsequent, but at least we have the first meeting and so far the only meeting in 2014. There may be some other bills assigned, but we've got 6 days left, so I'm not going to count on that. So here we are, and we're going to take a look at these bills. So without further ado, Representative Smith, do you want to just tell us what's happened and the update here on HB 682?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For everybody out there, I'm Representative Michael Smith from Marietta, Georgia. And what House Bill 682 will do, it will create a commission to study and make recommendations to the Georgia General Assembly regarding changes needed to be made to make our laws, general statutes, and our Constitution gender neutral. For example, taking words like fireman and exchanging them with firefighter, or policeman with police officer. What's neat about this is that it's already been done. We're one of 12 states that has this already done retroactively, so it's not really necessary for us to really talk about this bill today. But I'm willing to answer any questions if you all have any.
Representative Welch.
Representative Smith, so just so I'm clear, you're saying this has already been done and decided, and we already are now implementing that with our constitutional revisions, or when you said it's already been done, I wasn't following.
No, I think Legislative Council went through and already made our laws gender neutral.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I have noticed that every time we get a revision, it's always got he, she in it now. I always thought that was Miss Travis, but or Miss Betsy.
Well, very good. Thank you, Representative Smith. And so, therefore, we will dispense with House Bill 682. And so, to use up the time wisely, we're going to proceed with House Bill 731, which the members of this committee, for me in particular, and I think for this committee as a whole, and for those that know him or knew him, it's quite an honor to be able to consider a bill that has been named for our late chairman. And so I'm going to recognize Representative Welch, and Representative, please present your bill to us.
Down there, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee and those in attendance, this bill is a culmination of it started with the initial work of Calvin Hill, Representative Calvin Hill, who passed away several months ago. He was assigned the chairman of the committee, as all of you know, and part of that we discussed early on what codes would we do, and then what would be the process for going through that code revision. And it was decided as the committee that what we would do is send out letters to all the departments and agencies that are affected generally by the code as a whole, including your state and local officials, your local officials, as well as all your state agencies. As a result of that letter, that mass mailing that we did our first session, which was 2 sessions ago, we received a number of letters back saying that various codes were either obsolete, were not being utilized, or hadn't been utilized since their enactment, or they were no longer necessary. The dating had worked such that they actually had sunsetted in a sense, but they were still on the books. In addition to that, there have been constitutional decisions that have come down over the years, and our code has not been updated to remove those unconstitutional provisions. So we took that information, we compiled all of this into during last session, we compiled all this information. Actually, during the off session, Representative Pack and Representative Hill and myself worked on the bill that's here before you. A tremendous amount of this work was done by Brandy Bazemore, who was the committee aide previously, and then to our counselor, Betsy. She also had a tremendous amount of work in it. Betsy Howerton worked with me throughout the summer, putting up with my emails and constant revisions with the language of the bill. And I certainly owe a debt of gratitude to all those people that participated in the process. So with that history, I also wish to inform the committee that this, I believe, in recent history, is the first comprehensive attempt at a omnibus repeal bill that would actually remove code that is unnecessary and obsolete. We always correct code, and we do code revisions where we're just correcting language and numbers and semicolons and whatnot. But this is the first attempt to try to actually remove code that's unnecessary. So I think this is a fairly momentous event in terms of this General Assembly going back over the code and saying what needs to be here and what doesn't need to be here. So you're taking part in something I think that's fairly historic. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to go through each section. I've given the committee a two-page summary, and I believe this was also made available to all the departments that had engaged in the process. And you can see by that summary, Part 1 addresses obsolete code provisions. These are code provisions that have not been used or are no longer in use. And there are several of those. Sections 2.1 through 2.4 of the bill deal with archaic language and a program that no longer is being utilized through Title 12. 2.5 deals with some obsolete language that is found under the Georgia Educational Authority. I think the authority had asked us to remove that language. 2.6 removes some authorization to expend money on public roads for planned communities. And you'll see in here there's three different provisions. I'm sorry, two: water and sewer and public roads these were funding mechanisms that if you were developing a planned unit development, there was a way to generate some funds leveraging public dollars to build water and sewer facilities and then to build public roads. There's not been any use of these programs of late. They're not being utilized now, so we're asking them to be removed from the code. You can see from 2.8, we have from OPB, we had a request to remove some code sections been in the book since 1974, and no longer fits with the mission of the OPB. We've been asked by the building authority to remove some code sections dealing with the Confederate soldiers' home. There's some property there, but this is no longer utilized. There's also code sections to be removed under 2.10, section 2.10 of the bill, that created a transit governance study commission, but that's already done and served its purpose and now gone. And hopefully will be removed from the code after the meeting today and as it passes through the General Assembly. Part 3 removes certain unconstitutional provisions. 3.1 removes criminal defamation. The Georgia Supreme Court has already ruled that language in the code is unconstitutionally vague. 3.2 removes code sections that struck down as violating equal protection. And we also had changes in updating terminology under section Part 4 of the bill. This corrected the use of Georgia's weights and measurements law, and coinciding back with the language that's being utilized in the present day. This was requested by the Department of Agriculture, and it's just a name change. The behavioral health has also asked for a name change in its code, replacing the term mental retardation with intellectual disability. And then parts 5 and 6 deal with, it's labeled 4, but it's actually parts 5 and 6. These remove additional unconstitutional provisions. Parts 5 removes the use of the term Communist Party. In several of our oaths, we have what's called a loyalty oath, and it says subversive groups. So you're swearing that you're not part of a subversive group, but it specifically mentions the Communist Party. Well, whether you believe the Communist Party is a subversive group or not, if they are, then you're already saying you're not a part of them under the oath. If you don't think they're a subversive group, a political designation should not be a part of, and in fact it's unconstitutional to make someone abdicate their political affiliations with respect to their office. So that has been removed, and several of the loyalty oaths. And then Part 6, which I've actually labeled incorrectly as Part 4, removes the pre-clearance requirements. And this was a repeal of the Voting Rights Act and requiring pre-clearance. And we had a number of code sections that all required the filing of pre-clearance letters at the local level, and also required these letters, pre-clearance applications, to be filed with the Attorney General's office. So we've removed those from the code because the Supreme Court's ruled that as unconstitutional present day. That's the overview of the bill, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions the committee may have.
Any questions from committee members at this time?
Not a question as much. Just a thank you. I mean, I know exactly. I'm holding a 19-page bill that had to take a tremendous amount of time to put together. So thank you for the work here. I love being able to be a part of a committee that removes law.
Give Betsy a lot of credit because she's worked hard on this.
Well, Betsy, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Very good. We do have an amendment that's being offered to the bill, and
Are we taking more code out?
it looks like we're taking more code out, and we're going to let Representative Harrell present his findings and his amendment, and we'll discuss that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time. I mentioned a finding similar to those that Representative Welch just spoke about. It was a portion of our code that the Georgia Supreme Court deemed unconstitutional in December 1985. I met with Representative Welch and Representative Pack, both the co-signers of this bill, and they allowed me to appear here before you today and ask you to consider an amendment. The amendment would simply strike out in Title III, which is Georgia Alcohol Code, it would strike out an entire article, Article 3 of that code, that relates to certain prohibited activities on a licensed premise, on a place where you can serve and consume alcohol. This has been litigated both at the national level as well. But again, the language as deemed by our Georgia Supreme Court on December 5th, 1989, was the entire article was unconstitutional. So it seemed like this was the appropriate vehicle, the appropriate bill to add such a repeal to. So I have an amendment here. I don't think Betsy doesn't have it yet, but I had it printed up. But the wording is simply to amend House Bill 731 by inserting between lines 613 and 614 the following. Title III of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to alcoholic beverages is amended by repealing in its entirety Article 3 of Chapter 3 relating to prohibited conduct on the licensed premises. The Department of Revenue is in support of this, that administers that title. Legislative counsel that I work with from time to time on Title III related issues, Ms. Story, is in support of this amendment as well, and drafted the language for me.
Representative Farrell, do you have the name of the Supreme Court case that struck that language?
Yes, sir. There were two cases. One was Harris versus Entertainment Systems. The other is Webb versus Entertainment Systems, a Georgia Supreme Court case. And again, the decision was handed down on December 5, 1989. I've got the LexisNexis summary with the decision and the arguments. Interestingly enough, our former Attorney General Bowers represented the state in that case, and a former member of our body, Denmark Groover, was the prevailing party and represented Entertainment Systems in that case, and was successful in having it the language ruled unconstitutional.
Any questions for Representative Farrell?
Careful.
Thank you, Representative. I appreciate you looking into this for us. Should I be afraid to ask what these acts are?
It is. It deals with prohibited activities in a licensed premise. So it deals with anywhere where you can sell and consume alcohol which type of activities are inconsistent with that. And the Supreme Court ruled that the legislation that we're striking goes well beyond regulating freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and gets into areas that the state should not be in. And quite frankly, it deals with adult entertainment clubs.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Or expectant parents.
Any other questions for Representative Harrell?
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Representative. Well, at this time, I'm going to recognize Mr. Addison from OPB. He's going to speak on 731.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Representative Welch for his support in Section 2.9, and if there was any questions, just so that everyone understands, it's that act that we're repealing. DCA previously was a program under OPB back in the early 80s and 81. It was a program. 89, it became an agency. That's when everything was stripped out. This is just a remaining item that was left and was not pulled over. So if there's any questions, other than that, I want to thank Representative Welch for carrying this for us.
Any questions? Very well. Thank you. Well, we've heard the testimony, and there's been no questions, and I think we're ready for a motion. Very well. We do. Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay. Go ahead and second the motion on 731. And here's the amendment. Okay. So amendment number, just for the record, it's AM 360435. And it's amending the language by inserting the language. I'll read it once again. Title 3 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to alcoholic beverages is amended by repealing in its entirety Article 3 of Chapter 3 relating to prohibited conduct on licensed premises. Do we have a motion on this amendment? Yes, Representative Welch.
Before making the motion, I'd like to point out that I think that if we amend those lines, we don't actually have lines 613 and 614. I think that's just because the LC number was the earlier LC number. We subbed out when Representative Peake was adopting his or looking to adopt the cannabis medical marijuana bill. That we had previously had in this version, the initial version that went out to the departments, contained a request from the composite board to eliminate that actual code section that he is now using in part as a vehicle. So he's amending that code section. So he asked me to create a sub for this committee that would preserve that code section for the duration of this session to see how his bill would work. So that's why you have a sub. So I think that that's probably why there's a difference in Representative Harrell's amendment. So I think we would just need to insert between 610 and 611. Is that right, Betsy?
Well, I'd like to actually make this Part 7 and bump current Part 7 down to Part 8.
Okay. So
Yeah, if you would be.
I'll move to insert the proposed amendment language from Representative Harrell's amendment as being Part 7-1 of the bill, and then renumbering the existing Part 7 to be Part 8 and Section 8-1. And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Very well. We have discussion. So,
I just wanted to make sure that we can copy that since you just brought that to our attention today and it's not listed on the original sheet that we all have.
if we'd like to do that, would you like a copy of it particularly? Okay. Let's go ahead and do that.
Do you want a copy of the amendment of the code section?
Very well. We're okay. Yeah, exactly.
You want to run and get it back? Sure.
Yeah. In that case, we're going to pause a minute for our copies to arrive. Very well. Everyone should have their copies now. The only change is what Representative Welch has offered as an amendment to the amendment, which is to make the amendment the new section, or the old section 7-1, and the current section 7-1 to be renumbered section 8-1, or 8-1. Now we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Very well. All in favor of amendment AM 360435 as amended, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Very well. And now you have before you LC 335405S. It's the substitute to House Bill 731 as amended. Do we have a motion on that? Very well. And there's a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Very well. It passes unanimously. Well, with no further business before this committee, we are now adjourned. Have a good afternoon.